Shit. That was solid. That was a good way to start the live video. Anyway, what's up, guys? Welcome back. I've been gone for a couple of weeks with the lives. I've been a little busy. I've been a little tired. But this week, feeling good. So I wanted to do a live video for you guys. So as always, I put out a status about 11 o'clock. Had some people ask me some great questions. So we're just going to dive right into them. I'm just going to attack the questions today. Whoever rolls in, feel free to ask some questions as well. I see Jimmy's here. Sam asked, how do I mitigate stress levels at this stage of prep? That's definitely easier said than done because obviously when dieting, stress tends to go through the roof, especially at the end of prep. But a couple things that I've been doing, and then I will cover a few things that I will be doing. So a few things that I have been doing lately. I've actually been coming home from work a little bit earlier. Since I'm a trainer at a local gym as well, I kind of dictate my own schedule. So I've been choosing to come home a little bit earlier than usual, which kind of cuts down on overall stress for me. I've been taking some time to relax when I do come home for about 30 to 45 minutes as soon as I come home, which kind of recharges me for later in the evening. As far as things I plan to continue to do, I have been going to bed a little bit sooner. So some of you may have noticed I put out a couple posts about going to bed a little bit earlier. I've been going to bed anywhere between 9 and 9:30 as opposed to my normal bedtime of about 10 o'clock. So just trying to get to bed a little bit earlier to help increase a little bit better sleep. Those are the things that I've been doing and that I will continue to do. One thing that I will start up again is actually this Sunday. I'm going to be taking Core Hard Extreme, which is more of a hormone optimizer, a balancer. Stress cuts down on cortisol. So I'm going to be taking that for the rest of my prep, and that will help a lot. So basically that's how I try to manage my stress. And another thing, this kind of, you could just take it or leave it or whatever, but I try not to get overexcited about certain things. Like I try not to let things bother me. I just kind of brush them off. You know, it's just like, when people say something stupid to me, or there's stupid comments on my Facebook or Instagram or whatever, or somebody says a stupid comment to me in person, I'm at the stage right now where I just let it go. Like I don't even try to waste my time on it, truthfully. And that just helps me cut down on a little bit of stress. Amy asked, strategies for dealing with clients with gut issues that also have very high cortisol. This is meant for off-season, not contest prep. So gut issues are common. It depends on what foods people are eating. In their off-season, I would definitely recommend switching out foods during your off-season, mainly because you do have the flexibility. So if certain foods are bothering you, just find which ones they are and don't eat them. Now, when we're in contest prep, some people are more limited to the foods that they can eat. So that is where, you might just have to suck it up and eat those foods. As far as getting overly stuffed or, eating foods too high in fiber, I feel like those could be easily swapped out. And, obviously if you're having gut issues, you could always go with some kind of probiotic. But even those, and there's very different studies out there that show that, does it even make it all the way, to the digestive tract? It may or may not. So it's just one of those things where, some people are a little bit more predisposed to have certain gut issues as opposed to others. Maria asks, reversing after a competition straight to maintenance calories or increase weekly. So I am not a fan of the term maintenance calories because maintenance calories are a constantly moving target. A lot of you guys have heard me talk about that before. So I don't like to use the term maintenance because obviously my maintenance in the off season, I maintain weight at 4,500 calories. And right now, for the past couple of weeks, my weight's been going down a little bit. But I would say my maintenance calories at this point in time maybe are around 2,600, 2,700. So maintenance is a constantly moving target. So obviously I'm not just going to jump back to my off-season maintenance calories of 4,500. That wouldn't make sense. Instead, the way that I do like to have people reverse out of shows is ideally I like to actually have them be reversing into a show. Helps them fill out a little bit more. But if we're not in that case, I do like to make a very, very large jump right out of the gate. I don't necessarily have, I don't necessarily focus on their body weight coming up right out of the show as opposed to bringing food up. So some people have different views, and I've gone back and forth with these guys before in person and online about, should you gain, should there be a weight goal gain after a show? I've never agreed with that. I just feel like if you focus on bringing up food quickly enough, that the weight will naturally come up. So as far as Marie also goes on to say, reducing cardio, so depending on, if someone's eating very, very low calories or if they're doing a lot of cardio or maybe a mixture of both, I'm definitely going to hack and slash. Usually I just cut out a bunch, at least one full cardio session right off the gate, after the show, and then I start reducing the time. But that's more individualized. If somebody absolutely just needs to eat, that's when I'm going to start feeding them right away. So yeah, I focus bringing food up first and not necessarily weight, even though the weight will naturally come up as you start to eat more and more. Josh asked, I'm waiting to potentially compete in the spring of 2019 around April. I'm getting the ball rolling now. And he goes on to say, should I let the nutrition part ride the fat burning wave as long as possible before considering adding any cardio? Josh, my answer would be yes. I would say let your diet do most of the work right now. That's what I did. That's what I did for the bulk of my prep. I just started doing cardio a couple weeks ago, as a matter of fact. So yes, I would definitely let your nutrition ride as long as possible. And then if you need to, add it in later, you can. Now, what some people go on to say is that, you have more energy at the start of prep when your calories are higher. So they say that, you could go harder on your cardio. I do see that, but I also do know that sometimes when you do too much cardio that you could tap into lean tissue gains, and I'm not about to do that, especially being natural athletes. We can't just be wasting away all of our cardio, so I would not recommend jumping on too much cardio right now. And Josh, I would also recommend if you're competing in April to take a couple diet breaks along the way. Don't just go into a straight deficit. And I think that's the main difference here is the strategy approach from now until April that you should take. And that way, at the very last stage, kind of like I'm doing now, then you could start incorporating cardio if need be. Lydia asks, what is the most pain in the butt food meal to weigh or measure? And she goes on to say in the next question, when preparing large quantities of food such as rice, what process do you use to portion it out? Do you weigh it beforehand, weigh it after, simply measure it, cup? So Lydia kind of answered the question already because rice is a pain in the ass when it comes to tracking it correctly. So I'll tell you guys how I do it. Maybe a little bit over the top, but at least I know it's correct. So what I usually do, let's say I'm cooking 6 servings of rice, which is what I normally cook for the week. So I weigh out dry 6 servings of rice. I cook it, and then I weigh the amount afterwards immediately, and then I portion it out into equal portions in separate little containers into 6 equal portions. So, depending on how long I cook it, depending on how much the water is, it varies a little bit time to time, but it's usually somewhere between, 125 grams to 135 grams, depending on the water content. But I always do it per the batch, so there's no set thing. I actually do the math every single time I cook rice. Now, one thing she goes on to say, do I ever use measuring cups? The answer is no. I have actually never used measuring cups when it comes to weighing out any of my food, mainly because when you weigh out food by volume, it doesn't necessarily equate to the weight that's on the package. So for instance, if you were to weigh out, like a cup of flour, it would be more than like if you were to measure the actual serving of a cup of flour. So there is a slight, but definitely a difference when it comes to volume weight versus, or the volume calories versus the actually weighed calories. So I would at least stick to one, but preferably I would always stick to the scaled weight when it comes to that. Ben goes on to say, how am I deloading into my deficit? Are you still running push-pull leg split? Do you recommend more isolation lifts and less compound lifts during a deficit? So yeah, Ben, I actually just pulled the trigger this week. I made the decision that I'm going to be lifting 5 days a week now. So I am running currently a legs push pull off lower upper split. This is the first week I'm doing it, but that is just to help with my recovery. So tomorrow I'm actually taking the day off, and then I'm getting back to work on Friday and Saturday. Do I recommend doing more isolation lifts? Not necessarily. You know, if you're, now we are a little bit more prone to injury at the end of a contest prep, just because like the way leverages are, we don't have as much padding. I feel like people just aren't in the right mindset. They might not have the right form because they're just not thinking as well. So I could see some people might want to cut out, you know, the big movers. Personally, I haven't squatted in a long time, but that's not because of contest prep. It's just because it bothers my low back. I deadlifted today. I mean, I'm still going to continue to deadlift. It's not like I'm going to deadlift during like peak week or anything and trash myself. But yeah, I mean, I try to stick to my compound lifts. Personally, I'm not a big compound guy. Like, you don't see me under a barbell a lot, or any for that matter. The only thing I use for a barbell is pretty much my deadlifts, and I do those, you know, every 2 weeks maybe. So I mean, I would try to keep those compound lifts in there. I think a lot of people try to change their training when it comes to the end of a contest prep because they think it's going to work magic. But in the grand scheme of things, what you do have to realize is that what has built you muscle in the off season will sustain muscle during contest prep. I feel like a lot of people just ignore that fact that, you know, they built it one way and then they try to like remake themselves during prep another way, which I find kind of silly. Julie goes on to ask, how do you know when you need a true rest day, or you're just being weak as fuck? She didn't say that, but she did say AF, and you need to suck it up. So Julie, that is definitely a tough one, and I even said that to her. So last week, a lot of you guys know that it absolutely kicked my ass. I was giving it 100% in the gym, but afterwards, and like even during my training sessions, I just felt terrible. So there's a certain degree where you feel bad like during prep, and then there's a point where you feel like trash. So yeah, I mean, I definitely felt like trash last week. So I think that's like a good sign, and it's going to be individualized. You know, I can't describe it. I mean, it's, you know, it's definitely fatigue, but it's over the top fatigue. And I took an extra rest day, so I took 2 days off, Saturday and Sunday last week. Came back Monday, felt like $1,000,000. Still feel pretty good this week. You know, it'll be interesting to see, because this is the first week I've doing it, like I said, what happens when I come back from taking tomorrow off, and how Fridays and Saturdays training go. I'm hoping that my intensity is going to be at an all-time high from the 5-day split. But you do have to realize, and Julie's prepping for the same shows that I am, more or less, or at least one or two, is that we are pretty far into contest prep, and we can only push our bodies so far. And sometimes, you know, you do have to take your foot off the gas in order to continue. And Julie is preparing for the Pro International, which is September 15th, and then ideally she would like to compete at IPE Worlds, which is November. So that is essentially 2 months apart, which is not easily done. And a lot of people are going to try to maintain stage conditioning. I'm going to try to do it during that period of time. And that's very, very tough, and we put our body through a lot of stress. So sometimes, yes, I would agree that you definitely need to take an extra off day here and there. It's not going to ruin your physique. You're not going to lose all your gains. But the thing is that you do have to make it to the finish line. And I would definitely suggest taking an off day if you feel like absolute death. So there's the normal suck, and there's the extreme suck where you just like feel lost. And I definitely recommend, you know, trying to increase your rest days. Lydia goes on to ask, if I could only use 3 pieces of equipment for the rest of my life, what would they be? So Lydia, that was a great question. I've never had that one before. I thought about copping out and saying like a barbell, a dumbbell, or whatever, but I'm actually going to pick 3 pieces of legitimate equipment because I think that's a little bit more fun. And I actually changed my answer right before I started the video because I thought about it a little bit more. So the first one is a leg press, but it would be a horizontal leg press. I like those the most, mainly because you can move your feet placement on there. I was initially going to say a hack squat instead, but that's definitely more quad dominant. It's hard to activate the hamstrings on there. But if I were to use a horizontal leg press, I could not only activate my quads well, but my hamstrings as well. So that would be number 1. Number 2, I guess it would be a chest supported row. So it has to be some kind of a major back movement. Like I said, I'm sticking with the machine because I feel like a barbell would just be a cop-out because you could do anything with the barbell. So I would do a chest-supported row movement because it obviously directly hits the back and the biceps, so it would be one pulling. And then my pushing movement, I would actually pick a incline hammer strength press, mainly because it not only activates the chest, but also a lot of the front delt, and then you get some indirect tricep work in there. Yeah, so those would be my 3. Very good question. Dave goes on to ask, intermittent fasting as it relates to losing weight and body fat while training bodybuilding. Any personal experience with it? Pros and cons, opinion. So Dave, I've never intermittent fasted. The only time I've probably ever fasted was like during Lent. And that is more for religious purposes. I don't care to fast. I definitely wouldn't be doing that in a contest prep just because like I think you become a little bit too food focused when you like are looking at the clock constantly. But that's just my general opinion. Now some people like it because if they limit the amount of time that they are consuming their calories in, they feel like they could eat larger meals in a shorter amount of time. They feel more satiated. I could see the benefit of that if your calories are very, very low. But personally, if I wouldn't be able to function correctly if I didn't have anything in my system. That's just me. I know other people can get away with, you know, not eating for 12 to 14 hours, 16 hours a day. But I definitely can't do that. Now, is there any necessarily benefit? Not necessarily. The research out there is not sound when it comes to intermittent fasting. You know, at the end of the day, it's going to be calories in versus calories out. As simple as it gets. You know, like, sure, I fast when I sleep, but as soon as I wake up, you know, within an hour, I'm eating. I'm not a big believer in intermittent fasting, but if it meets your schedule, you know, like I have some nurses, you know, who don't eat for certain periods of time because they're at work or, you know, police officers or whatever. So I don't assign intermittent fasting. I'm not a believer in it personally, and at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters. John asks, that's exactly what I've been doing with rice. It's tedious. Yeah, it's crazy. If anyone has any other quick questions, I'll stay on just for another minute or two. I did want to keep these pretty quick. I guess we're at the 18-minute mark right now. So if you want to get in any last-second questions, I'm not guaranteeing that I'm going to be doing these every single week just because it is a little bit taxing. But my guess, well, maybe. Well, we're not doing it on the 12th. That's my wife's birthday. We'll see when the next one's going to be. It'll be sometime in September. September is going to be a very, very, very busy month for me. Next week, I actually have one of my clients from Sweden coming in. He's going to be living with me for a good amount of time, about 20 days, because he's going to be competing. I'm going to be traveling a lot. My show is September 15th. I'm going to be out of town September 20th, 21st, 22nd. So it's going to be a blur. So we'll see when the next one is, guys. But Lydia said, and then Julia asked a couple questions here. What's my water consumption at? Just over a gallon, Lydia. It's nothing crazy. Right now, like, I drank my gallon, and then I drank like this much of my second one. And by the end of the day, I won't even drink a gallon and a half. Julia asked, any advice to someone that is trying to maintain leanness for 2 to 3 months at a time? Yeah, get ready early and then increase your food slowly but surely. I think a lot of people at the end of their preps, they rely too much on the scale and not visual changes because they will see that, okay, I'm maintaining weight or I'm even losing weight, and they think they're getting leaner, but they might actually be losing muscle mass. So during that point in time, rely more on pictures than anything. Obviously, use a scale as a tool. But I would recommend trying to actually increase your food to spare any muscle loss. That is the biggest thing. That would be the toughest thing for both Julia and myself when we are competing this year. Is to be able to continue to have that level of conditioning. Now, my plan, since Julie brought it up, is I'm going to compete September 15th. Like I've said, my next show is October 27th. I'm actually going to take a 1-week diet break after this September show. So at like the second to last week of September, I'm going to be taking a diet break in order to once again not lose muscle. If I need to dig afterwards, I will diet for a couple more weeks, but we'll see. Lydia asks, have you ever trained through a hand injury? No, I have not. I'm sorry. Julie asks, favorite cake ball flavor? Catherine makes Oreo balls, and she will make those for me after IPE Worlds. And I won't have one until then. I don't have any of those until I actually am done competing for the year because they are so dangerous for me and I cannot control myself. But that is it for the night, guys. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Have a great night and keep dominating every aspect.